If you've ever traveled alone, you know the odd silence of hotel hallways at night, the sterile lights, the mechanical hum of the vending machine, the occasional flicker of something just at the corner of your vision. But what happens when the room you're checked into isn't listed anywhere? Not on the hotel map, not in the fire evacuation plan, not even in the staff's records? That's exactly what happened to me when I checked into the Hollow Pines Inn and chose room 313. It began as nothing more than a necessary escape. A weekend alone to disconnect from a stressful job and an even more stressful breakup. Hollow Pines Inn sat nestled at the edge of a sleepy town 3 hours outside the city, a converted manor house with antique charm and the promise of seclusion. No social media distractions, no buzzing phone, just the calming emptiness of being alone. I checked in late that Friday evening. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with graying curls and a voice too soft for her creaky surroundings, glanced at the screen, frowned, then retrieved a brass key from under the counter. Not a card, an actual key heavy and cold. She handed it to me without explanation. Room 313, she said quietly, sliding a form toward me. You're lucky. Not many get that one. I furrowed my brow. Is that one of the suites? Her eyes met mine for a fleeting second, just long enough for discomfort to flicker in her gaze, before she looked away and began typing something. It's a quiet room. Very private. Top floor. I signed the form without asking more. After all, privacy was exactly what I was after. The elevator creaked its way up the 3 floors before coming to a shuddering stop. The hallway smelled faintly of lavender and dust. Old portraits lined the walls, long-dead proprietors or previous guests, their eyes painted with unsettling precision, almost following you as you passed. But as I reached the end of the hallway, something odd struck me. The room numbers skipped from 311 to 315. Number 313. I double-checked. The key tag clearly said 313. I walked back, slower this time, running my fingers along the aging wallpaper, looking for a door I'd missed. That's when I saw it, barely noticeable between the 2 adjacent doors. A thin seam in the wall. No knob, no number plate. Just a faint outline where the wallpaper was a shade newer than the rest. I touched it. The wall clicked. A hidden door, flush with the wall, popped open with a low creak, revealing a narrow entrance into a room I shouldn't have found. I half laughed, unsure if it was some novelty suite or just poor architectural design. I stepped inside. Room 313 was still. Oppressively still. Dust danced in the weak light of a single wall sconce. The room was styled like the rest of the inn, antique furniture, maroon carpet, heavy drapes. But something about the air felt stale. As though the room hadn't been opened in years. A thick layer of silence draped everything, the kind that pressed against your skin. The bed was already turned down, as if someone had been expecting me. I put down my bag and explored the space. It was a bit larger than a standard room. No windows, oddly, but with a 4-poster bed, an old writing desk, and a freestanding mirror that leaned slightly against the far wall. The bathroom, clean but old, had clawfoot tubs and tarnished brass taps. The whole place smelled like damp paper and faded perfume. I stood in the middle of the room, key still clutched in my hand, heart tapping slightly harder than it should have. That familiar feeling of being watched crept in like cold air under a door. Don't be paranoid, I muttered to myself. But even saying that aloud didn't help. That night I tried to sleep, but the silence wasn't silent enough. There were sounds, not loud, not obvious, but persistent, like soft scratching behind the walls. The kind that disappears the moment you strain to hear it. And once, just once, I swore I heard breathing. I sat up in bed, every nerve on edge. I wasn't imagining that. It had been a slow, raspy inhale, close, too close. I turned on the lamp. Nothing. Just the room shadowed and still. I checked the bathroom. Empty. I even looked behind the thick curtains covering what I assumed were windows. But when I pulled them back, there was no window. Just more wall. A sudden weight settled in my stomach. Why would a room in an old manor-style hotel have no windows? Fire safety laws wouldn't even allow that. And yet I was here. In room 313. A room that didn't exist on the hallway. A room that wasn't supposed to be real. By 3 a.m. I was pacing. I went to the door, intending to leave and sleep in the lounge if I had to. But when I tried the handle, it wouldn't turn. It was locked. Not just from the inside. The key, which I had left on the side table, was gone. I scoured the room. Nothing. It was as if the key had vanished into thin air. I knocked on the door. Then pounded. No answer. I yelled. Still silence. Eventually, I curled into the corner of the bed, watching the mirror, because for some reason I couldn't take my eyes off it. And it was in that mirror, just before sleep finally overtook me, that I saw something move. A figure, blurry, standing behind me. But when I turned around, nothing. Only the soft click of the wall door sliding shut again, sealing me in. I didn't sleep. Not really. I drifted in and out of a half-conscious state, my mind heavy with the weight of that vanishing key, the mirror that showed more than it should, and the lingering sense that I was not alone in the room. Even in the soft haze of twilight sleep, I felt something brush my leg once, like fingers lightly grazing the edge of the blanket. But when I kicked out in panic, there was nothing there. Just stillness. A mocking, waiting stillness. By morning I was exhausted, but the door was unlocked again. As though nothing had happened. The key sat neatly back on the bedside table. I stood there, staring at it, heart hammering like a trapped bird. I picked it up slowly. It was cold, heavier than I remembered. As I held it, I noticed something new etched into the brass. Thin, nearly invisible unless caught in the light. A date. October 13th, 1973. It hadn't been there before. I stepped into the hallway with a sense of dread, expecting someone, anyone, to react to the fact that I had emerged from a door that shouldn't exist. But the corridor was empty, humming with that same mechanical stillness. I made my way down to the lobby, clutching the key in my coat pocket like a weapon. The same receptionist was there. She looked up and gave a half-smile that faltered when she saw me. "Everything all right?" she asked, her voice coated with something I couldn't identify. Not concern. Something more like caution. I walked up slowly and placed the key on the counter between us. "Room 313, I said flatly. Her eyes dropped to the key and then, curiously, she didn't touch it. Instead, she looked past me and said, "That room isn't meant to be in use." "Then why did you give it to me?" I demanded. She pressed her lips into a tight line, her eyes scanning the lobby as though someone might be listening. "I didn't assign you that room. I don't even have that key on file." "I have the form," I snapped. "You wrote it down yourself." But when I opened my bag to retrieve the signed form, it was gone. My hands shook. I pulled everything out, my clothes, my charger, my book, but the form was no longer there. Even the tag with the room number was missing from the key. It looked ordinary now, blank. She saw the panic blooming on my face and sighed, motioning for me to follow her through a staff-only door behind the desk. I hesitated, then followed. We moved down a narrow hallway into a cramped office that smelled of paper and old coffee. She pulled out a drawer filled with dusty guest records. "No one's been booked into 313 for decades," she said without looking at me. She produced a black and white photograph from the drawer, a faded image of a smiling couple standing in front of a door. My heart stopped. It was the door to room 313. That hidden, knobless seam in the wall. Same pattern wallpaper, same lamp beside it. But the couple, there was something wrong with their eyes. Even in the faded photo, they were too dark. Hollow. Who were they? I asked, voice low. The couple who were the last known guests in that room. In 1973. She paused. They never checked out. What does that mean? It means they vanished. No one ever found them. Just their luggage still sitting in the room. She took the key back with a tissue and put it into a drawer labeled, "Do not assign." That room was sealed. Should have been permanently. But every few years, it reappears. The wall reopens. Someone always finds their way in. I felt ice travel down my spine. Why would it do that? She hesitated. Some say the room calls to people who are on the edge. Vulnerable. People running from things. People the hotel remembers. That's ridiculous. Maybe, she said, folding the drawer shut with finality. But you're not the first. And you won't be the last. I left the office with a churning mix of disbelief and dread. As I turned the hallway corner back toward the elevator, I passed a man in a dark hotel uniform. I hadn't seen him before. His eyes lingered on me a moment too long. He didn't speak. Just gave a small, unsettling smile as I passed. Back in my room, my new room 210, I tried to sleep, but every creak, every faint hiss of the pipes made me jump. My brain replayed the sounds from the night before, scratching, breathing, the figure in the mirror. I couldn't shake the sense that I hadn't just stayed in room 313. I had been watched in it. Examined. Chosen. That evening, I went down to dinner in the hotel's quaint, candlelit dining area. As I ate, I scanned the room for familiar faces. That same man in the hotel uniform sat in the corner, unmoving, facing the wall. A shiver slid down my spine. I asked the waiter who he was, trying to keep my voice casual. The waiter glanced over. "Who?" "The guy in the back," I said. Dark uniform, just sitting there. He looked again, brow furrowing. There's no one sitting there. I turned. The man was gone. That night, I made the mistake of looking into the mirror in my new room. The reflection showed something it shouldn't have. The furniture behind me wasn't the furniture in room 210. It was from 313, the ornate writing desk, the four-poster bed, the freestanding mirror leaning against the wall. And standing in the reflection just beside the bed was the couple from the photograph. Their faces were stretched into unnatural grins, skin gray and mottled, as if they had been underwater too long. Their eyes were still dark, still hollow. I spun around. Nothing. Just the standard room. But the reflection hadn't lied. I packed my bag in 30 seconds. I was leaving. No. I didn't care that it was nearly midnight. I didn't care if I had to walk 10 miles to the nearest motel. I needed to get out of that hotel before it swallowed me like it had swallowed the couple from 1973. As I reached the lobby, no one was at the desk. I rang the bell, once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. And then, behind me, I heard the elevator ping. I turned. The doors slid open. The elevator was empty. But inside, on the floor, lay the key. I backed away slowly. My feet felt like stone. The light above the elevator door blinked once. Then again. And again. Ding. Suddenly, every light in the lobby flickered. The walls groaned. A wind, impossible indoors, rushed through the space, cold and full of whispers. I couldn't understand the words, but I felt them. They slithered across my skin, pulled at my thoughts. I bolted for the front doors. But they wouldn't open. The glass warped under my hands, shifting like liquid. My reflection stared back at me, not panicked, not terrified like I was, but calm. Smiling. I stumbled back, heart in my throat. Let me out. I screamed, pounding on the door. A whisper rose behind me, close to my ear. You checked in. You have to stay. I turned. The man in the uniform stood behind the counter now, grinning. His eyes, they weren't eyes. They were dark pits. Voids. Hunger. Guests of room 313 never check out, he said. Suddenly the floor beneath me lurched. The ground tilted. I fell backward, crashing against the cold marble. The world blurred. My limbs felt too heavy. My eyes started to close. And before everything went black, I saw the elevator doors slide shut. The glowing number above? 313. Darkness held me like a weight. Not just the absence of light, but a complete lack of time, direction, and self. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe, not in the way you're used to breathing. It felt like drowning in still air. No dreams. No thoughts. Just that strange waiting feeling, like something on the other side of the dark was watching me. And waiting for me to wake up. When I did, it was slow. Painfully slow. My limbs felt as if they'd been soaked in concrete. My head throbbed with every heartbeat. And then I saw the room. It was 313 again. But different. This time it was alive. The wallpaper pulsed softly, almost like skin over veins. The walls breathed, ever so slightly expanding and contracting. The writing desk was there, but warped like wood under water. The freestanding mirror had grown taller, now touching the ceiling, and in it, my reflection smiled even though I wasn't. I shot up, heart hammering. The door was gone. Not just hidden, gone. Seamless wall all around me. The room had sealed itself shut. Okay, I whispered to myself. It's a nightmare. It has to be. But the cold seeped into my bones. The kind of cold that couldn't be imagined. My breath fogged the air. The silence was too perfect. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of listening. I wasn't alone. I knew I wasn't. I turned slowly to face the bed. There was someone in it. Under the covers, just barely rising and falling with a breath that didn't sound human. Shallow, jerky inhalations like a machine mimicking life. My legs didn't move, but my eyes did. The figure shifted. A hand slid from under the sheets, gray, bloated, fingers curled into themselves like they'd forgotten how to move. I backed away toward the mirror. The mirror's surface rippled. For a second I saw something inside it, a version of me except not me. Pale. Lifeless. Watching. And then the surface went flat again. No, 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 I whispered, spinning back toward the bed. It was empty. The blankets were untouched. But I knew something had been there. A sound behind me. Soft. What? A whisper too close. You shouldn't have come back. I turned to see nothing. Then the lights blinked out. I screamed and backed into the wall. In the darkness, something brushed past me. Cold and wet. I dropped to the floor, crawling blindly, heartbeat thunderous. My fingers hit the desk leg. I scrambled up and yanked open its drawer. Inside was only one item, a guest ledger. Leather-bound. The edges curled with age. The names inside were written in elegant cursive. At first they seemed normal. Couples, solo travelers, even a few families. But then the entries started repeating. The same names. Over and over. Hundreds of them. Each entry ending with, "Never checked out." I flipped to the last page. And there it was. My name. In handwriting that wasn't mine. Guessed. My name. Check-in, June 14th. Status, permanent. "No," I whispered. "No, no." I ripped the page out and turned to throw the book. The room was full. They were here. Dozens of them. Shadowed figures lining the walls, barely illuminated by the flickering sconce. All watching me. All still. Some wore modern clothes. Others dressed like they belonged in another era. One woman wore a 1920s flapper dress, her face half-rotted. A child clutched a torn teddy bear, its glass eyes glinting. And in the middle, standing side by side, the couple from the photograph. Their mouths opened simultaneously. "You belong to the room now," they said in unison, voices echoing as if underwater. I ran. I slammed against the wall where the door had once been, beating it with fists and elbows and knees. Screaming. Crying. Blood from my knuckles smeared across the wall, but the room didn't care. Wanted me. Behind me I heard their footsteps. Slow. Rhythmic. The figures were advancing. In desperation, I turned and lunged toward the mirror. If it could show what wasn't real, maybe it could take me somewhere else. I hit the glass with my shoulder. It didn't shatter. It swallowed me. The sensation was like falling into cold jelly. Every sound became distant. I saw shapes swirl around me, moments, memories. The hallway. The receptionist. The man in uniform. My childhood bedroom. My last relationship. My worst mistakes. Everything I had ever wanted to forget. And then I was on the other side. Same room. But different still. This version of 313 was even older. Dust blanketed every surface. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling like funeral veils. The sconce flickered with a sickly green flame. But the mirror was now a window. I could see into the version of 313 I had just escaped. And someone else was in it? Was me. Or someone who looked like me. Sitting calmly at the desk. Writing in the guest ledger. Smiling. And from behind that version of me, the couple placed their hands on my double shoulders. Like proud parents. A sudden realization hit me like ice water. The room didn't trap the body. It trapped the soul. I was a ghost to my own reflection now. And someone else, something else, had taken my place. I pounded on the mirror. "No. That's not me. Get out." My reflection looked up, made eye contact, and smiled wider. "Welcome to the in-between," it mouthed. Then it turned the mirror away. And I was alone again. Hours or maybe days passed. Time didn't work properly here. I didn't feel hunger or thirst, just the creeping dread of permanence. Then I saw it, etched faintly on the floorboards beneath the bed in this forgotten version of 313. Words scratched over and over again by desperate hands. "There is a way out. But it costs you." Beside it, more scratched words. "The mirror is the door. Choose who replaces you." My heart plummeted. That was how the room fed. That's why the receptionist called it selective. The room let one go, if another took their place. It demanded sacrifice. And I realized with horror that someone had chosen me. Whoever was in my place now, they escaped because I took their place. I was the cost. And now if I wanted out, I'd have to do the same to someone else. I stood in front of the mirror again. It shimmered. This time showing the hotel lobby. Guests arriving. One in particular caught my eye. A woman. Alone. Tired. Distant. Exactly like I had been. The mirror pulsed. A choice. And God forgive me, I stepped forward. There is a silence that follows betrayal. A hollow, gnawing kind of quiet, not from the world around you but from inside. As I stood before the mirror, watching the woman check in at the front desk, that silence filled me like a tide rising in my chest. She looked exactly how I must have looked. Worn down, aimless, quietly lost. She was dragging a single suitcase behind her, her shoulders curled inward, as if carrying something invisible but unbearably heavy. And worst of all, she didn't see it coming. She had no idea what this hotel really was. I didn't even know her name. But I stepped closer. The mirror's surface began to shimmer again, pulsing with an eerie glow like liquid silver. Choose. That was the word carved into the glass now. Etched faintly where my reflection should have been. I whispered, "I'm sorry," and reached through. The cold slammed into me like a wall. One moment, I was in the warped shadow of room 313, and the next, I was gasping for air in the real world, sprawled on the carpet of a dim hallway. The hallway. It was the third floor again. I pushed myself up with trembling hands, barely believing it. The wallpaper was normal, still ugly but flat. The lights buzzed softly overhead. I could hear distant elevator music, the low hum of life returning. I was back. I checked my hands, my face, my skin. All real. My heart thudded loudly in my chest. I was real again. I turned toward room 313. The door was closed now, back to being that impossible seam in the wall, barely visible. But the difference was, I could feel it. The presence inside. It was hers now. The woman from the lobby. I had done it. I had traded places. I stood up slowly, and for a brief, shameful moment I felt relief. But then, just as I turned to go, I heard something. A scream. No, not a scream, a whisper scream like it had been sucked backward into the void the moment it left her lips. It came from room 313. And it didn't stop. It didn't stop. I stumbled away down the hall, hands pressed over my ears. It wasn't just sound, it was guilt weaponized, embedded into the very walls. I ran for the stairs. I couldn't bear to take the elevator again. I burst out into the street like I had emerged from underwater. The fresh air was damp and cool. Morning had barely begun. The city was just stirring, people walking past with coffee cups and tired eyes, unaware of what the building behind me really was. The hotel looked ordinary. Not evil. Not cursed. Just brick and glass and flower boxes beneath the windows. I stood there, uncertain, breathing hard. The woman, she was in there now. Trapped. Because of me. I should have run. Disappeared. Tried to forget. But I didn't. Instead, I crossed the street, stood on the opposite curb, and waited. I needed to see if the room would let her out. I stood there for 3 days. The hotel lights came on at dusk, went off at dawn. Guests came and went. Some laughed as they dragged their luggage. Others looked quiet, worn out, just like I had been. But the woman I saw check in, she never came out. On the 4th morning, I saw the receptionist again. Not behind the desk this time, but walking across the street with a coffee in her hand. She stopped when she saw me. "You shouldn't be here," she said flatly. I had to see. Her gaze sharpened. "You did it, didn't you? You chose someone." I didn't answer. She nodded slowly. "They all do." My throat tightened. "How do you live with it?" "I don't. I'm not really alive in the way you think," she said softly. "I work for the hotel. Just like the others. Some of us, we're bound. You walk out with a piece of that room in you and it never lets go. Eventually it calls you back. If you don't return, it finds you another way." I shook my head. "I'm done. I'm not going back." She gave me a look that felt centuries old. "They all say that. But once you open the door for the room, once you let it in, you're never really free." She turned and walked away, disappearing into the morning fog like smoke. That night, I slept in a grimy roadside motel miles away from the city. Just to be sure. I kept the lights on, the windows open, and mirrors covered. But sleep didn't come easy. Because just before dawn, something happened. I woke up with a jolt to see the doorknob turning. Slowly. I held my breath. Then it stopped. Silence. I crawled out of bed, barefoot, and stepped to the door. My pulse throbbed in my ears. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. But hanging on the doorknob outside, a brass key. Room 313. It had followed me. I drove as far as I could the next day. Threw the key off a bridge somewhere outside of Yorkshire. Didn't look back. I booked a flat under a fake name, threw out my phone, cut ties with everyone. Started trying to live a normal life. Weeks passed. Then months. I started to believe maybe, just maybe, I had escaped. Until one night I woke up to scratching. Not from inside the room, but from beneath the floorboards. That soft, rhythmic sound, like nails dragging across wood. The kind of sound that makes you sit up and listen even when you don't want to. I pulled my blanket tighter. Told myself it was rats. Or my imagination. Or maybe guilt crawling back in. Then 3 nights later, the mirror in my flat changed. It no longer reflected the room I was in. It reflected room 313. And she was still there. The woman I had traded places with. She hadn't aged. She hadn't moved. But she was looking straight at me now. And she was smiling. Not with forgiveness. With understanding. Because now she knew how the room worked. She had learned. And maybe, just maybe, she had found someone to trade with her. I thought it was over. That I had made my deal and escaped. That I had left the cursed room 313 behind. But now I understand you don't leave room 313. Lets you go. And only until it wants you back. The mirror in my flat had stopped showing my reflection. It had become a window again. Not a portal this time, but a surveillance screen. It showed her. The woman I traded. But something was wrong. She wasn't scared anymore. She watched me. Always watching. Every morning she stood in that same spot inside room 313, arms by her side, face pale, unmoving, but smiling. There was a new understanding behind her eyes. Like she'd become part of the room. No worse, like the room had become her. And then one morning she wasn't alone. There was a man standing behind her. Mid-30s. Confused. Holding a suitcase. He looked familiar. He turned to look directly at the mirror. At me. And it clicked. It was me. Or someone who looked like me. I lost track of time after that. Days blurred. I didn't leave the flat. I covered every reflective surface. Tossed the mirror in a skip. But that didn't stop it. I saw reflections in my tea, in windows, in phone screens, puddles. Always room 313. Always her. Always a version of me standing in that cursed room, a little different each time. Older, thinner, scarred, crying, screaming, or smiling just like she did. The room wasn't showing me its prisoners anymore. It was showing me what I was becoming. A letter arrived at my door 3 weeks later. No postage. Just a key inside. The same brass key. Room 313. I didn't touch it. I didn't have to. The very air in my flat changed after that. It smelled like mildew and iron. The walls sweated at night. I woke to find the wallpaper peeling, revealing rotten wooden slats beneath. I had moved 200 miles from that hotel. And now the room was here. The next day I found the door. At the end of my hallway, a door that wasn't there before. No number on it. But I didn't need to see the number to know. It was room 313. I packed a bag. Told myself I'd leave the country. Go to the Alps. Morocco. Antarctica. Anywhere with no mirrors. I made it 5 steps out the door. And the hallway changed. I swear to you it stretched. The air went thick like soup. My vision warped. And when I turned back the flat was gone. Only room 313 remained. That door waiting. And the key in my hand. I don't remember picking it up. This is the part one need you to understand. The room doesn't kill you. Keeps you. Not in chains. Not in fire or torture. It feeds on something deeper. Just regret. Guilt. That moment when you think I can walk away and someone else will take my place. That's what binds you. I opened the door. Room 313 greeted me like a homecoming. Looked the same. The bed, the desk, the tall mirror. Except this time there were hundreds of mirrors. Every surface was a reflection. The ceiling. The floor. The inside of the lampshade. I was surrounded by me. But none of them moved like I did. Some were screaming. Some were scratching at glass. One was burning. Another just stared at me, head cocked, mouth hanging slightly open. And standing in the center of it all was the woman. The one I had traded. But now, she was wearing my face. She stepped forward. You left the door open, she said, her voice calm and hollow. I didn't mean to. You never do, she said. Behind her, the mirrors rippled. From each one a figure stepped out. All of them were me. Every version the room had ever imagined. Some young. Some old. Some monstrous. And they all reached toward me. Take it back, the woman said. Or stay forever. I turned to run. But the door was gone. The room had closed. This is what it wanted all along. Not a victim. A caretaker. Someone to keep the cycle alive. And now, I see the truth. There never was a hotel. There never was a receptionist or a lobby or guests. Room 313 isn't part of the hotel. It is the hotel. A pocket of something older than time. A hunger disguised as hospitality. A trap disguised as a choice. And once you see the door, once you enter, you become a seed. And eventually you grow your own door. I don't know how much time I've spent in here now. Days. Years. It doesn't matter. But here's the part you need to hear. The room's hungry again. Is stretching out. Searching for cracks. For guilt. For someone just tired enough to check in without asking questions. Someone like you. Because if you're still watching this, if you've listened this far, if you've imagined the room, then the key has already found you. It doesn't need your permission. Just your curiosity. So tonight when you go to sleep, look closely at your bedroom door. Count the rooms in your house again. And if you find one extra, don't open it. Don't listen. Don't look. Because if you see the number, it's already too late.